Well, it's a classic relegation 6-pointer, isn't it? Massive for both teams. But let's start with managerless Leicester. Brendan Rodgers released a statement saying that he felt he would have kept Leicester up this season had he stayed. Why do you think they decided to do it now?
Well, I think that they dropped into the drop zone, and I think that they probably decided that having something fresh at this stage might be the short-term lift as what they need to keep them in the Premier League. I do agree with Rodgers. I do think he would have kept them in the Premier League, but I guess the club board wasn't willing to take that risk.
You often see if a decision like this is made, Sam, that, as Izzy says, maybe they bring someone new in, that you might get the new manager bounce. But obviously Adam Sadler has been at the club already, so does it make much of a difference having a caretaker manager?
Maybe very temporarily. I remember when Gerrard got sacked and before they brought in Unai Emery at Villa, they beat Brentford like 5-2. Just after Gerrard got sacked with the caretaker manager, and think, oh, okay, that's just like, in some cases, it's almost, you just need to get rid of the manager. It doesn't matter who else is coming in, and that fixes it. You know, we were talking about Chelsea and smiles on faces and that kind of thing. Maybe that helps. But it's surprising, isn't it? Because you would think with Leicester, they've had a lot of opportunities this season when they could have sacked Rodgers, as we said earlier on. So you'd think they'd be speaking to agents, and we've seen in the last few years enough times when they go, right, we've sacked this manager, but this guy's coming in, and the statements have basically been, you could do it in the same one. But there's been a lot like Tottenham with Conte. They've made the decision, but without having a clear idea of what they're going to do next. And I don't know, I think it's risky. But Leicester do have quality, so you can say that. And if they do kind of recover that mood because of the managerial change, that will help. But I think they're going to need somebody proper in. But
just on the back of that, the managerial change without replacing, let's say, in this situation like Leicester, like looking at Conte at Spurs, he's quite charismatic and lively on the touchline, and his presence clearly has an impact on the players, whether it be good or bad, depending on the game. But looking at Rodgers, one of his key strengths is his level of emotional control. Like he's very calm, he's not panicked, and like Sam said, there are earlier on times in the season where you think, oh, maybe Leicester are considering sacking Brendan Rodgers, but he hasn't, and Rodgers has remained really calm throughout. So it does make me wonder, off the back of Sam's point, well, if Rodgers' presence isn't good for the team, well, why didn't they do it earlier? Because I think he would have kept them up, really.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? In terms of the quality that you point out that they have, Sam, you're absolutely right, because Leicester have scored 40 goals this season. That's more than any team in the bottom half of the table. It's actually only 2 fewer than Manchester United, who are in the top 4, but conceding goals has been their issue. So is that quality they have enough to keep them up?
Probably not, considering the amount that they leak goals. And I think January transfer window, they brought in Harry Souttar, centre-back, the Australian centre-back, who had a good World Cup, but he's not going to fix the problems in a Premier League defence, having not had that Premier League experience. So I think that calibre of player, perhaps they needed to be looking, a little bit higher level than Harry Souttar in order to stabilise that back line. But there are players in that team who can win them games, but it's just bringing it all together. And they do look a little bit lost out there at the moment, the Leicester City players.
It's such a good unit normally. Yeah. In terms of defensive problems, it doesn't necessarily have to be obviously just bringing in one guy. But they've got good players, but they've also got like tenacious players. If you think like Barnes and Dewsbury Hall and stuff, you think they know what their jobs are when they haven't got the ball. They've got enough good midfielders, not just like James Maddison who can score goals and take set pieces, but so many midfielders who you think you can get a good solid midfield unit out of these guys who can press, who can stay compact. That was always the good thing about Rodgers when they played, top 6 teams at Leicester. He'd always have a plan for them and they could always execute it. It's just so strange now that there's not been able to do anything really. They've been so porous at the back to overshadow the fact that they've scored 40 goals and this second bottom is incredible.
They've also dropped the most points in the league from winning positions. So if you think about that, you can tell us as a player, is that a psychological thing? Is there some kind of issue there where they go ahead in games and then they manage to throw it away somehow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that comes down to game management. You've got to have, and I'm looking at that Leicester team, and just as Sam was speaking there, I'm going, where's the experience in that side? There isn't much experience. I mean, Tielemans is probably most experienced. James Maddison wears the armband. He's still mid-20s. And you go, well, where's the experience? And those are the players in and around this situation that Leicester are in that they need, that during games, if they are leading, it's the game management. How do you, see that game out, use the ball, the possession stats? Do you go for the corner when it's really late on in the games? It's little things like that help you see games out. Yeah. But Leicester are not really doing it at the moment.
And they're really bad at defending set pieces, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which doesn't help.
Yeah.
Anything.
Bournemouth have been interesting as well because they've actually picked up a couple of results recently, yet they still find themselves in the bottom 3.
Yeah.
How decisive can this one fixture be as to who stays up and who goes down?
It's like the title thing earlier about Arsenal and Liverpool. There's still a long way to go. And that's the thing with Bournemouth. Like, even when Eddie Howe was there, they'd lose or not win for 10 games. Then they'd beat Chelsea 4-0. Then we'll go, oh, Eddie Howe's brilliant. It's like, well, what about all the other games? That just seems to be like Bournemouth DNA. And sometimes it's enough to stay up and sometimes it isn't. There's nothing really more scientific than that. They'll lose a load of games, then they'll go on a bit of a run. If they were to win this one, it would be huge. But then if they were to lose the next 3, which they're capable of doing, then it doesn't really matter. And I mean, it doesn't, it's not very scientific, is it? But that's the reality at the bottom of the table, especially when there's 9 teams in it.